Welcome back to Fox 11 News in Depth. When LAPD Chief Charlie Beck retires in June, he'll have served as chief for nearly 9 years, making him the longest-running chief in decades. And he knows a thing or two about what it takes for his successor to be successful at heading up a department that's taken a lot of criticism going back decades.
They came in and flooded a community that wasn't prepared to meet them. We didn't ask these people to come here.
From William Parker, who was chief for nearly 4 decades, to Daryl Gates during the LA riots.
I once again didn't put 42 years in this job, 13 years as chief of police, to see it blow up in smoke.
The LAPD gained a rocky reputation that's taken years to turn around. From Willie Williams to Bernard Parks, William Bratton, and Charlie Beck. The emphasis has shifted to community policing, and now Chief Beck is stepping down. Who will step up to replace him? In talking with Fox 11's Laura Diaz, Beck says the new chief will need to straddle 2 worlds.
I would look for somebody that knows policing very well. It's a complicated job. If you have to learn the nuts and bolts of it as you go, you won't be successful. And then you have to understand Los Angeles. You know, this is not the garden variety city. You know, the relationship between the chief and the mayor and the council and the police commission, you know, is very, very different than in other places, and you know, you can learn that, but it's a learning curve.
Beck has navigated his own challenging times with the department, including use of force issues like the Azelle Ford shooting. At the same time, record drops in crime. Beck says the new chief, whoever that might be, will need to listen to their critics, but he says those critics need to listen also.
LA has a police commission that actually is the policy-making body for the police department, and that reviews use of force, and that makes decisions, and that has a real civilian oversight responsibility with an inspector general that works for it. And that's the envy of every other police department that wants civilian oversight, the system that we have. And unfortunately, it's been subverted by folks that don't want discourse, that just want to put forth their view of the world.
Charlie Beck is the 55th LA Chief of Police, and now the search begins for the 56th. Joining me now, Robert Harris, Director of the LA Police Protective League, or perhaps I should say one of the directors, right? You got the board of directors.
Correct.
And before we actually start talking, I want to talk about this process of selecting a new chief. It involves a number of things. First of all, the city's personnel department comes up with at least 6 candidates. The police commissioners then whittle that down to 3. The mayor selects one of those 3, or he can turn those down and ask for 3 more candidates. The mayor's final choice has to be approved by the city council. So it seems like a fairly straightforward process, and it's one we've been through before.
Yeah, you would think that a good process produces a good candidate, right? So I think a key component of that is input. Input from the community, input from our city governmental leaders, input from the rank and file, and input from the Protective League itself.
So when we talk about the Los Angeles Police Protective League, that is the police officers union, the rank and file. You're a police officer.
That is correct.
And so what do you look for in a new leader?
So clearly, I think the preference for the LAPPL is going to be that whoever the mayor chooses to be the next chief of police, that he would be the most, or she would be the most qualified candidate for the job.
You said or she, and there is some talk about that. What do you think about the idea of a female chief? It's not unheard of. I think Seattle has a female chief. The Orange County has had a female sheriff.
Yeah, LAPPL is, we're open to anything. We're open to a female chief. We're open to an internal, an external, an Asian, a Latino. As long as they're a qualified candidate and ready to take on some of LA's most pressing issues, we would support that.
A lot of people have ideas about who the next chief should be. And especially when it comes to race or gender. Earlier this week on the Fox 11 5 o'clock news, political commentator JASMYNE CANNICK offered this opinion.
Well, one of the first things I would like to see is us break from the tradition of having a white male as our police chief. Here in Los Angeles, I think this is a very diverse city. I think we have a very diverse police department. We can look at maybe bringing in a female chief, maybe bringing in someone who is a person of color. I think if you look at the trend across the country, you'll see that there are more and more African American chiefs of police, Latino chiefs of police. I think that that was a huge disconnect with Chief Charlie Beck.
Let me just have you bounce off of that. Your thought as you listen to what she had to say.
Well, my thoughts are Los Angeles is a huge and diverse city, and there are a lot of complex issues facing it, and what we want is the most qualified candidate that's going to begin to address some of the most pressing issues in LA.
What are those pressing issues?
Oh, well, you've got we want somebody that's going to reduce the violent crime, because violent crime has been rising. We want somebody to address the understaffing crisis that we're going through. We want a chief that's going to begin to prepare LAPD to provide security for the city for the 2028 Winter Olympic Games. There's officer morale issues, continuing to build upon our strong community relationships. So there are a lot of issues that I think need to be tackled, and we want the most qualified candidate.
What are those officer morale issues from?
I think the officer morale issues don't just necessarily stem from who the chief is, but let's be honest and let's call balls and strikes. And in this day and age, it's very difficult to be a law enforcement officer because, unlike any time before, I think they're under more scrutiny. I think there is a lack of respect for what we do. So all of that plays a role. When you do a profession that you love and you watch it get misaligned and mischaracterized, obviously that impacts morale.
Well, how does that affect you out on the street? You're a police officer.
Well, it impacts me because when you go out there every day and you don that uniform and you go out to a community that you are committed to serving and you have committed to give your life if necessary and you want to do the best job possible, to then know that there are segments of society that want to mischaracterize what you're doing or want to use your profession as a political football, it gets very disheartening.
So we expect this process to begin in a couple of weeks with the preliminary things that have to happen. And so what is your as a union member and as a board member and also as a police officer, what is your message to the people that will make this decision?
My message is let's look for the candidate that's most qualified to tackle those issues I've talked about. Reduce violent crime, address the issues of homelessness.
And morale.
And morale,
All right.
Absolutely.
Robert Harris, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Coming up on Fox 11 News in Depth, cleaning up the trash collection mess. Some people are complaining about LA's new garbage hauling system. Garbage is piling up, bills are going up. We'll take a look after this.